Hello everyone, and welcome to Skyscraper ASMR. In this video, I'm going to be going through several YA novels that are kind of silly, but ones that I really enjoyed when I was younger. Some of these are sequels meant to more represent the series. Some of these are standalone books, and they're about all sorts of things. There's a lot of fantasy in here. I've always been a big fantasy fan, so let's get started. I'm just going to tip these on their side so you can see the spines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them one by one. I'm going to talk a little bit about what my memories of them are, what my impression is. Then I'm going to read the back of the novel, the summary of the novel. And then I'm going to read the first page. So, let's get started. I'll just fan them out like this. Try and get them all in the frame. So first of all, oops, things are sliding everywhere. Okay, so first of all, we have in the bag by Kate Klise, or Klise, not sure how to pronounce it. And this book, from my memory, is about a mother and daughter and father and son that don't know each other, that end up in Madrid, and the kids fall in love with each other. They're not kids, they're like 17, and the parents fall in love with each other through a series of odd circumstances. It was a fun read, and I love Spain, so it was fun that it was set in Madrid. Okay, let's read the back. Okay. A European vacation, a luggage mix-up, a note from a secret admirer, Meet two single parents who think they're too busy to date, and two teenagers who can't stop writing flirty emails. This is the tale of connections missed and made in a universe that seems to have its heart set on reuniting Miss 6B and Mr. 13C. Web. I can't believe I picked up the wrong bag at the airport. My dad is never going to let me hear the end of it. Coco. I don't understand why Mom told me to pack my worst underwear, and now I've lost my bag. Ugh. Andrew. I cannot stop thinking about that woman in 6P on the flight to Paris. Daisy. I don't have time to worry about the creep sitting in 13C who slipped a note in my purse. I have to find my daughter's missing bag before this ruins our vacation. Okay. Shall we read the first page? I think I dog marked it. There we go. Dog marked it. Dog eared it. Anyway. Oh God. I saw the problem as soon as I unzipped my black duffel bag. There in two neat piles sat clothes that were definitely not mine. Colorful new t-shirts, size small, ironed jeans, who irons jeans, flip-flops, high-heeled sandals, a skirt, a gypsy-looking blouse thing, and flowered underwear and bras. Oh God, I said again, this time out loud and with a low groan. What's wrong? Dad asked. He was walking out of the bathroom wearing a hotel robe and drying his hair with a towel. This isn't my stuff, I said. What do you mean? Dad replied. This bag, it's not mine. I must have picked up somebody else's bag at the airport. And so the drama begins. It's a fun book. Okay, I'm just going to set that maybe up here in a stack, just for some space. So the next one that I have, many people have heard of this. This is The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. I loved Meg Cabot. I read everything that she wrote. I thought that she just had the most fun series in the whole world. And this is the one that made her famous. So this, as many people know, is about a regular girl who finds out that she is the heir to a fictional country's throne, meaning that she is a princess. And her grandmother comes to tell her and she educates her on how to be a princess. And she's sort of like this ugly duckling character, sort of just navigating high school and this new weird thing about being a princess. It's a fun read. I remember I read this, or tried to read it, when I was probably 11 or 12, and I was sitting in the car with my family and I was reading it and I came across a word I didn't know, and when that happens I would just ask. So I asked my parents, what does sexual harassment mean? And they were like, I think this book is a bit old for you. And so I had to continue reading it a couple years later. But let's read the summary on the back. Mia Thermopolis is pretty sure there's nothing worse than being a 5'9", flat-chested freshman who also happens to be flunking algebra. Is she ever in for a surprise? First, Mom announces that she's dating Mia's algebra teacher. Then Dad has to go and reveal that he is the crown prince of Genovia. And guess who still doesn't have a date for the cultural diversity dance? Okay, let's read the first page. Okay. It's written as a diary, like in diary entries. Tuesday, September 23rd. Sometimes it seems like all I ever do is lie. My mom thinks I'm repressing my feelings about this. I say to her, "No, Mom, I'm not. I think it's really neat. As long as you're happy, I'm happy." Mom says, "I don't think you're being honest with me." Then she hands me this book. She tells me that she wants me to write my feelings down in this book, since, she says, obviously, I don't feel like I can talk about them with her. She wants me to write down my feelings? Okay, I'll write down my feelings. I can't believe she's doing this to me. Like everybody doesn't already think I'm a freak. I'm practically the biggest freak in the entire school. I mean, let's face it, I'm 5'9", flat-chested, and a freshman. How much more of a freak could I be? If people at school find out about this, I'm dead. That's it. Dead. Oh God, if you really do exist, please don't let them find out about this. There are 4 million people in Manhattan, right? That makes about 2 million of them are guys. So, out of 2 million guys, she has to go out with Mr. Giannini. I can't go out. She can't go out with some guy I don't know. And then, she can't go out with some guy she met at D'Agostino's, I'm not sure, or whatever. Oh no, she has to go out with my algebra teacher. Thanks, Mom. Thanks a whole lot. And the drama continues. Okay. So, we've pretty much, I think, finished my sort of non-magical books. Everything else has an element of fantasy or make-believe or things like that. Okay, so on to this book. Okay, so this book is, I think, the second in the, so the first book was Hush Hush, and that was the first book. I do this thing where I'll borrow the first book from a library, and then I'm so desperate to read the second book that I just buy the second book. So I own a lot of sequels, but not a lot of the original books, which is kind of irritating. But anyway, this is Crescendo. By Becca Fitzpatrick. It's a hardback, so makes lovely noises. Okay, let's get to it. I think this book is about fallen angels. It's a romance between a teenage girl and her fallen angel, I believe. So, let's read the summary. Okay. They couldn't keep it. Hush, hush. Oh, this isn't the summary. This is reviews. Okay. Hold on. Let's go to the... Perfect. Okay. Found it. Okay. Nora Gray's life is still far from perfect. Surviving an attempt on her life wasn't pleasant, but at least she got a guardian angel out of it. A mysterious, magnetic, gorgeous guardian angel. I love winos. But despite his role in her life, Patch has been acting anything but angelic. He's more elusive than ever, if that's possible, and what's worse, he seems to be spending time with Nora's archenemy, Marcy Miller. Nora would have hardly noticed Scott Parnell, an old family friend who has moved back to town, if Patch hadn't been acting so distant. Even with Scott's totally infuriating attitude, Nora finds herself drawn to him, despite her lingering feelings that he is hiding something. If that weren't enough, Nora is haunted by images of her murdered father, and comes to question whether her Nephilim bloodline has anything to do with his death. Desperate to figure out what happened, she puts herself in increasingly dangerous situations to get the answer. But maybe some things are better left buried, because the truth could destroy everything and everyone she trusts. Okay. So, that is the summary. Let's read the first page, shall we? Oh, this is a short one, so I'll read the next page as well. Okay, so, prologue. Coldwater, Maine, 14 months ago. The fingers of the thorn apple tree clawed at the window pane behind Harrison Gray, and he dog-eared his page, no longer able to read through the racket. A furious spring wind had hurled itself against the farmhouse all night, howling and whistling, causing the shutters to slam against the clapboards with a repetitive bang, bang, bang. The calendar may have turned to March, but Harrison knew better than to think spring was on the way. With a storm blowing in, he wouldn't be surprised to find the countryside frozen in icy whiteness by morning. To drown out the wind's piercing cry, Harrison punched the remote, turning up Bononcini's Ombre Mai Fu when he set another log on the fire, asking himself, not for the first time, if he would have bought the farmhouse had he known how much fuel it took to warm one little room, let alone all 9. The phone trilled. Harrison picked it up halfway through the second ring, expecting to hear the voice of his daughter's best friend, who had the annoying habit of calling at the latest possible hour the night before homework was due. Shallow, rapid breathing sounded in his ear before a voice broke the static. "We need to meet. How soon can you be here?" The voice floated through Harrison, a ghost from his past, leaving him bone cold. It had been a long time since he'd heard the voice, and hearing it now could only mean something had gone wrong, terribly wrong. He realized the phone in his hand was slick with sweat, his posture rigid. "An hour," he answered flatly. He was slow to replace the handset. He shut his eyes, his mind unwillingly traveling back. There had been a time, 15 years ago, when he froze at the sound of the phone ringing, the seconds pounding out like drums as he waited for the voice on the other end to speak. Over time, as one peaceful year replaced another, he'd eventually convinced himself he was a man who'd outrun the secrets of his past. Okay. I'll stop there. That's a fun read. Why won't this close? Oh. So that's Crescendo. Okay. The next one. Do you notice how a lot of YA novels have really dark covers? Not this one. This one's actually maybe a little bit younger audience, not necessarily a YA, but it's so creative and unique. I just loved it so much. I've read it several times. It's sort of unlike anything I've read before. The premise is that the main character is a character inside of a storybook, and all the people around her are also characters. And whenever the girl who owns the book opens up their book, they leap into action and they act out the book. And so that it's a little bit like Toy Story that way, in that they leap to life when the reader comes. But they have to like climb between lines, and they're always like sitting on exclamation marks and things like that. So it's really creative. It's an excellent story. And it's called The Great Good Thing. Let's read the summary. Sylvie had an amazing life, but she didn't get to live it very often. Sylvie has been a 12-year-old princess for more than 80 years, ever since the book she lives in was first printed. She's the heroine, and her story is exciting. But that's the trouble. Her story is always exciting in the same way. Sylvie longs to get away and explore the world outside the confines of her book. When she breaks the cardinal rule of all storybook characters and looks up at the reader, Sylvie begins a journey that not even she could have anticipated. And what she accomplishes goes beyond any great good thing she could have imagined. Okay, and let's read the first page. Chapter 1. Sylvie had an amazing life, but she didn't get to live it very often. What good were potions and disguises if no one came along to scare you, or save you, or kiss you behind the waterfall? Week after week, nothing changed. Years went by. The sparkles on Sylvie's dress began to fade, and a fine dust coated the leaves, turning the green woods gray. Once in a while, it looked as though something might happen. The ground trembled slightly, then nothing more. People got used to these disturbances. King Walter scarcely noticed. He sat about playing cards with the goatherd. Even the wolves stopped lurking and just lay in the heat, panting like house dogs. Just read one more page. It got so that one day, Sylvie sat down on a stone at the edge of the lake and wept. "Come on," she whispered fiercely. "Come on, something happen." Sylvie sat down on a stone at the edge of the lake. At that moment, a fan of light began opening in the corner of the sky, sending flashes of color across the water. Sylvie wiped her eyes as the woods brightened. A breeze flew through the treetops, knocking against branches as it went. Reader, reader, cried an orange bird, bursting into the air. Book open, groaned Bullfrog. Open, book open. Sylvie sprang to her feet, excitement and fear catching in her throat. How far had she wandered? A distant trumpet sounded, and the forest echoed with clumping hooves, flapping wings, shouting knights, fluttering dowagers, all racing to get to their places. Sylvie had the farthest to go, all the way to page 3, but she knew the shortcuts between descriptions and arrived, hot-cheeked, just as a shadow moved over the land and the face of an enormous child peered down on her. So that is the beginning of The Great Good Thing. Would highly recommend. It's very fun. Just put that over there for now. So the next one that we have is Vampire Academy. I always thought that the woman on the front looked like a young Angelina Jolie. I'm not sure if anyone agrees with me on that, but I think this is also maybe not the first in the series. From what I can remember of this book, it's about vampires, and each vampire has sort of like a best friend / protector that are also maybe vampires, and adventures occur. That's all I remember, but it's all set at this like sort of cool boarding school for vampires, and it's kind of fun. I remember enjoying it. I think there's also a romance storyline, which is always fun. Okay. Only a true best friend can protect you from your immortal enemies. Lisa Dragomir is a Moroi princess, a mortal vampire with a rare gift for harnessing the earth's magic. She must be protected at all times from the Strigoi, the fiercest vampires, the ones who never die. The powerful blend of human and vampire blood that flows through Rose Hathaway, Lisa's best friend, makes her a Dhampir. Rose is dedicated to a dangerous life of protecting Lisa from the Strigoi, who are hell-bent on making Lisa one of them. After 2 years of freedom, Rose and Lisa are caught and dragged back to St. Vladimir's Academy, a school for vampire royalty and their guardians-to-be, hidden in the deep forests of Montana. It's funny, I didn't know it was set in Montana. But inside the iron gates, life is even more fraught with danger, and the Strigoi are always close by. Rose and Lisa must navigate their dangerous world, confront the temptations of forbidden love, and never once let their guard down, lest the evil undead make Lisa one of them forever. So this is one of those books, like Crescendo, that are sort of off-brand Twilight. And what I mean by that is that they're just sort of dark urban fantasy story, romance stories for teenagers that came out in that sort of same era. They're all fun. So that is Vampire Academy. Let's read the first page. Chapter 1. I felt her fear before I heard her screams. Her nightmare pulsed into me, shaking me out of my own dream which had had something to do with a beach and some hot guy rubbing suntan oil on me. Oh, this is crazy. Images, hers, not mine, tumbled through my mind. Fire and blood, the smell of smoke, the twisted metal of a car. The pictures wrapped around me, suffocating me, until some rational part of my brain reminded me that this wasn't my dream. I woke up, strands of long dark hair sticking to my forehead. Lisa lay on her bed, thrashing and screaming. I bolted out of mine, quickly crossing the few feet that separated us. "Liz," I said, shaking her. "Liz, wake up." Her screams dropped off, replaced by soft whimpers. "Andre," she moaned. "Oh, God." I helped her sit up. "Liz, you aren't there anymore. Wake up." After a few moments, her eyes fluttered open, and in the dim lighting, I could see a flicker of consciousness start to take over. Her frantic breathing slowed, and she leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder. I put an arm around her and ran a hand over her hair. I'll stop there. Okay, that is Vampire Academy. Put that there. Okay. So, now we move on to this book, which is called Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. And this was very popular when it came out. This actually is the first in the series. And what this book is about, it's sort of alternate universe, or maybe post-apocalyptic dystopian world where beauty is of highest value, and you live in this futuristic world, and just living your life until you're 16, but you live only with other young people. There's no one older than 16, I believe. And they're very technologically advanced. But once you turn 16, you undergo this plastic surgery or something like this, and you go live in another part of the city where the pretties live. It's a bit on the nose with the metaphors, but it's a fun read, and it follows this main character who desperately wants to be made into a pretty and move out to this different area where all they do is just have fun and go to parties and stuff like that. But I think she gets sent away into the wilderness to find someone who has escaped or something like that. I remember being totally entranced by this book. I loved it. It does look like she's staring at you though. So let's turn this over and read the summary. Okay. Still staring at you. Everybody gets to be supermodel gorgeous. What could be wrong with that? Tally is about to turn 16, and she can't wait. Not for her license, for turning pretty. In Tally's world, your 16th birthday brings an operation that turns you from a repellent ugly into a stunningly attractive pretty, and catapults you into a high-tech paradise where your only job is to have a really great time. In just a few weeks, Tally will be there. But Tally's new friend Shay isn't sure she wants to be a pretty. She'd rather risk life on the outside. When Shay runs away, Tally learns about a whole new side of the pretty world, and it isn't very pretty. The authorities offer Tally the worst choice she can imagine: find her friend and turn her in, or never turn pretty at all. The choice Tally makes changes her world forever. So, it's a very dramatic book. First page. New pretty town. The early summer sky was the color of cat vomit. I didn't see that coming. Of course, Tally thought, you'd have to feed your cat only salmon-flavored cat food for a while to get the pinks right. This is really gross. The scudding clouds did look a bit fishy, rippled into scales by high-altitude wind. As the light faded, deep blue caps of night peered through like an upside-down ocean, bottomless and cold. Like any other summer, a sunset like this any other summer, a sunset like this would have been beautiful. But nothing had been beautiful since Paris turned pretty. Losing your best friend sucks, even if it's only for 3 months and 2 days. Tally Youngblood was waiting for darkness. She could see New Pretty Town through her open window. The party towers were already lit up, and snakes of burning torches marked flickering pathways through the pleasure gardens. A few hot air balloons pulled at their tethers against the darkening pink sky, their passengers shooting safety fireworks and other balloons, and passing parasailers. I'll just read one more page. I love this book. Laughter and music skipped across the water like rocks thrown with just the right spin, their edges just as sharp as Tally's nerves. Around the outskirts of the city, cut off from town by the black oval of the river, everything was in darkness. Everyone ugly was in bed by now. Tally took off her interface ring and said, "Good night." "Sweet dreams, Tally," said the room. She chewed up a toothpaste pill, punched her pillows, and shoved an old portable heater, one that produced about as much warmth as a sleeping Tally-sized human being, under the covers. Then she crawled out the window. Outside, with the night finally turning coal-black above her head, Tally instantly felt better. Maybe this was a stupid plan, but anything was better than another night awake in bed feeling sorry for herself. On the familiar leafy path down to the water's edge, it was easy to imagine Paris stealing silently behind her, stifling laughter, ready for a night of spying on the new pretties. Together, she and Paris had figured out how to trick the houseminder back when they were 12, when the 3-month difference in their ages seemed like it would never matter. "Best friends for life," Tally muttered, fingering the tiny scar on her right palm. The water glistened through the trees, and she could hear the wavelets of a passing river skimmer's wake slapping at the shore. Okay. So that is the beginning of the Uglies trilogy. There. Go. Okay. So this is another Meg Cabot book. Like I said, I loved everything that she wrote. And this one is, again, the second in the series. The first one is called Airhead. And this, I think this is the second one, is called Being Nikki. So the premise of this book is sort of high-tech, sci-fi. So what happens in the first book is this brilliant, cynical, nerdy teenager is in an accident, a freak accident, I think at the same time as this really popular supermodel named Nikki. And then she wakes up, her brain, the nerdy teenager's brain, having been transplanted into the body of this model. And the company that sort of represents this model didn't want to lose the money-making machine that was this model superstar, but she had gotten brain dead in the accident or something, so they put this teenage girl's brain into the model, and her parents had agreed because they didn't want to lose her, so they kind of still had her because her brain was inside someone else's body. It's kind of weird, but it's a really fun read. So let's look at the synopsis. Okay. Things aren't pretty for Emerson Watts. I think that's the real teenager's name. Em was sure there couldn't be anything worse than being a brainiac in the body of a teenage supermodel, but it turned out she was wrong. It turns out she has a mother who's gone mysteriously missing, a brother who's shown up on her doorstep demanding answers, and a former best friend who's intent on destroying Stark Enterprises. Wow. Stark Enterprises, like Iron Man? Weird. How can Em balance all that with school and runaway shows, especially when she's got ex-boyfriends crawling out of the woodwork who want more than just a photo op, and a company she represents that seems to be turning to the dark side? Not to mention trying to convince the love of her life that models aren't really airheads after all, especially one model in particular. Nobody said it was going to be easy being Nikki. Okay, so it's kind of silly, but it is a lot of fun. So let's read the first page, shall we? Okay. 1. I'm cold. I'm freezing, actually. Waves are crashing against the back of my legs, and the water, which this afternoon had been a warm turquoise, has turned icy black. The rocks to which I'm clinging are cutting into my fingertips and the bottoms of my feet. They're slippery as a glacier, but I can't let go or I'll fall into that frigid water in which, no exaggeration, sharks are swarming, beneath me. And since I'm wearing nothing but an extremely small white bikini and a thigh holder for the dagger I've got clenched between my teeth, I haven't got anything to protect me from their razor-sharp teeth. I just have to hang on, or else face possible limb amputation, or, at the very least, excruciating pain, worse than the pain I'm already experiencing even. I've got to complete my mission, deliver the package to the mansion, perched on the cliff above me, or I'll have to listen to Andre, the bitchy art director, go on about it all night. No, 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 Andre yelled from the boat where he was directing the shoot. Viv, adjust the gel on that spot over there. No, that one over there. Seriously, I should have just fallen backward into the water and let the sharks eat me. I was fairly certain the sharks wanted to eat me, despite what Dom, the guy Stark Enterprises rented the boat from, told us. He said they were nurse sharks, perfectly harmless, and more scared of us than we were of them. He kept insisting they were attracted to the bright lights Francesco, the photographer, had set up, and weren't hanging around because they wanted me for a midnight snack. But really, how did he know? They've probably never tasted supermodel before. I'm betting they'd find me delicious. Nick? Brandon Stark called from the boat. How you doing? Like he even cared. Well, I guess he cared. but it wasn't as if he was here for any reason other than that he wanted to snag a ride on the corporate jet so he could spend the day cruising around the island of St. John on a jet ski. So, that is the beginning of Being Nikki by Meg Cabot. It is a fun, silly read with lots of twists, which I love in a fun novel. Okay, we'll put this here. I'm going to rearrange a little bit so I have more space. Okay. Last novel. This is Saving Juliet. By Suzanne Selfors. This was a very fun book, which I enjoyed very much the several times that I read it. So the premise, I believe, is this teenage girl has a mother who's a bit of a stage mom. And the mother owns a theater where they're putting on a production of Romeo and Juliet. And the teenage girl, I believe, is playing Juliet across from this sort of handsome boy bandy guy that's playing Romeo that they got to bump up the popularity of the show. Until the two main characters, Romeo and Juliet, are transported into what would be the real world of Romeo and Juliet. So they are transported backward in time, and they meet the real, I think they meet the real Romeo and Juliet. Obviously they weren't real people, but in this version they are, if I recall correctly. And they have to get back to their own time. So it's a bit of a time travel, fantasy, Shakespearean spoof novel, and it's a lot of fun. Okay. So, looks like I'm holding my space. I wonder what page I'm on. Okay. Let's read the synopsis. Oops, I'm tipping my books over. Okay. Two Juliets, both alike in desperation. 17-year-old Mimi Wallingford of the Broadway Wallingfords has a life most girls can only dream of, complete with the starring role in her family's production of Romeo and Juliet. But acting is not her dream, and she's fighting for the right to trade her script for a scalpel and become a doctor. 14-year-old Juliet Capulet of the Verona Capulets has lived a lonely life, imprisoned by the feud that consumes her family and by her iron-fisted mother's forcing her into an unwanted marriage. She will do anything to avoid her betrothed, even if it requires faking a boil in her bottom or something more dangerous. During the play's final performance, Mimi's wish to get away actually comes true when she and her heartthrob co-star, Troy Summer, that's such a generic name, are magically transported into Shakespeare's Verona. Now that she knows the real Juliet, Mimi doesn't want to stand by and allow the play to reach its tragic end. But if saving her new friend means changing the ending of the greatest love story of all time, will she and Troy ever make it back to Broadway? So yeah, kind of a silly read, but lots of fun. I'm gonna lose my place. That's okay. This, above all, to thine own self be true. Wow, there are a lot of pages before this novel starts. All the world's a stage. 1. My story begins at 6:45 on a Saturday evening 1 year ago. On that eventful night, winter pounced on New York City like a hungry tomcat. The temperature plummeted. Pedestrians hid their faces behind coat collars and scarves, hurrying home as heavy clouds loosened a flurry of dusty snowflakes that coated everything like polluted powdered sugar. Why choose that particular moment to begin my tale, as opposed to 5:55 or 7:10? Because winter's first snow transforms everything it touches, and so too was I about to be transformed. A bit of heavy symbolism to get things started. I stepped out of my toasty limousine, thanking the driver as he held the door. The words Wallingford Theatre, composed of yellow light bulbs, were reflected in the passenger window. The moment my boots touched the pavement, my stomach turned queasy. It wasn't that I'd eaten a rancid meal or was coming down with the flu. It was what I was about to do that made me feel sick. You see, at that time, I was a professional actor, but the job wasn't agreeing with me. Despite the numbing cold, patrons formed a line that wound around the block. A fog of excited breath swirled above our heads. This was not the crowd of retirees who usually came to the Wallingford to catch classical renditions of Shakespeare's plays. Teenagers formed this line, girls to be exact, all dressed up in fur and velvet, fidgeting nervously as if they had to go to the bathroom. They didn't notice me. I wasn't the person who had inspired them to wait in line for 3 hours. If you had walked by, you might have thought that Jesus himself had come to town. Such was the excitement. I passed them quickly. A few parents recognized me. "That's Mimi Wallingford," one said to her uninterested teen. "Who?" "You know, the great-granddaughter of Adelaide Wallingford." As long as I can remember, these words have followed my name. Great-granddaughter of Adelaide Wallingford. Most people don't even bother to pause between my name and my place in the family tree. Never do I hear, "That's Mimi Wallingford, a very fine person," or "That's Mimi Wallingford, an individual." Never am I introduced without my super special tagline. Okay. That is Saving Juliet. So, now you have it. You've got, let's put these back in a row so you can see them. Now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 silly, fun, dramatic YA novels to add to your reading list. I highly recommend all of them. They were great adventures for me when I was a young girl, a teenager. They were a lot of fun, and I highly recommend them. So thank you so much for watching, and have a good evening full of books, reading, and relaxing rest.